Hello and welcome to the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz, and today I am joined by a couple of good buddies. We've got Adam Emmert and we've got Mr. Clinton Bonner, the birthday boy who's still celebrating, 2 weeks later.
I'll take that. Yeah, we had our birthday party last night just because that's when we can make it happen. And in my little town of Westbrook, Connecticut, it's kind of become this annual thing where the whole town looks at it as if it's like the end of misery season up here, right? Where it's just mud and gray. So we had the birthday party last night. It was a fun time. The temperature yesterday, guys, it was 42 degrees and rainy the entire day. So we thought we were exiting misery season. We did not, in fact, Adam. But we did have a lot of fun, though. It was nice celebrating our birthday, albeit a week later.
I once dated a girl named Jess who we had been together for a couple months when her birthday rolled up, and she let me know that she would celebrate a day for every year that she was alive. So she was turning like 32 at the time. So it was 32 days of birthday for Jess. And that's what this reminds me of, Clinton, with you celebrating birthdays 2 weeks later. Have you been doing are you doing 47 days of birthday? Once I found that out about her, we immediately broke up because I'm not celebrating anybody's birthday for more than half a day.
That's a long time. Yeah.
Well, we can start early because if we're going to start my 50 days, well, no, I'm not 50 yet. So whatever I feel like I'm getting close. So I deserve like a few extra birthdays. But if we start now, I can have enough birthdays to get us through May. So it'll be fun. But we're not just talking birthdays today. We are talking about the draft coming up. And I know, Clinton, that you have this idea that there's a big argument within draft circles of whether or not you want to go best player available, whether or not you want to draft for need. It probably ends up being a little bit of both. But I feel like there's viewpoints on either side of this that are very strongly held beliefs on which one that should outweigh one versus the other. And that's something that I know you have a strong feeling about.
I sure do. Yeah. I'll put it out there that I think the BPA folks are a bunch of cultists when it boils down, just like absolute mob mentality, non-critical thinking cultists who regurgitate whatever they hear from certain Seahawks pundits, and they put no critical thought into it whatsoever and just repeat it. And they think they're smart when they do it. And they're not. They're, in my opinion, they're being really dumb. And this idea that it's BPA or die, you have some magical numeric that is in some vacuum that doesn't worry about the year or the players on the board or the composition of your team and what you might need is absolute lunacy. And I want to put them down today, guys.
So
well, Clinton,
go ahead.
I think that, a lot of these guys that are really deep into BPA, we have all this data and we don't necessarily know exactly how to apply it because football is a complicated thing, Clinton. You know what else is a complicated thing? Your body. And it's hard to get good data regarding how your body's doing, all that good stuff. And I think our sponsor has a great way to help you figure that out a little better.
I've got really good news for everybody that's into that. Yeah. So our sponsor is Body Spec. You see bodyspec.com/C-Hawkers on screen there. If you're ready to kickstart your fitness journey, whether you're an athlete or just some talking heads like us, you want to get back in shape, Body Spec has you covered. This is getting you a DEXA scan, the world's most accurate body composition scan. The cool part about this, guys, is that these are the numbers that actually matter. You see them on screen here. Your body composition, your bone density, your overall health metrics, way more powerful than just hopping on a scale and basically guessing. And this starts well under $100. So it's an incredible gift to give yourself, give somebody you love. And because you're a little flocker, you're out there, you could use the code SHP, get $10 off of single scans. So it's actually really quite affordable too. Some of their competitors, several $100s per scan. Got to go check it out. Hit that QR code because they're charging a lot less. And really, can you put a price on your health, guys? I don't think you can. I think it's a good idea. So Body Spec doing the work because I think we all want to be maybe a little bit healthier in 2025. And as we get back into this draft season, Brandon, I want it a little healthier. I want us to look at the whole composition and not look at, oh, what's my spleen doing just now? Because it's all about the spleen. It's spleen or nothing. And who cares what the heart, lungs, liver, brain, and everything else in the body is doing, because it's all about the spleen. That's BPA, Brandon.
BPA. Marvin Little Deer in the comments saying, Cultus, laughing out loud, love it. And it's interesting because best player available to me is something that, if it's something that we could actually determine going into the draft, then I think that we would see the draft play out that way, right? Like if every player lined up in a row as to best to worst, and you could just pick down the line like a schoolyard, draft, then that would make this topic and subject just a whole lot easier.
It would. It definitely would. Now, I think what's important that you need to start with when you're comparing BPA to, maybe let's just call it common sense, because I think that's kind of, to me, that's where they butt heads. Like the idea of need, some people will say, other people will call it desperation. How about let's just call it common sense? Like, this spot's bad, here's something we can do about it. Like, well, so BPA versus common sense. What is the goal of using either of these two tools? And to me, the goal has to be to make this team better now and to make this team better in the next 2 to 3 years. That's the goal. And I think we all agree on that goal, whether you're in Camp BPA or Camp Common Sense. And for me, I think that there is a mix of these two that can be applied, but I can't get to just saying, here are the grades and the players. This is the best guy. You take him and you did your job great, because I think it misses a ton of context about what's going on with the team, what you need to do to actually improve the team. How can you improve the team the most with the least amount of input? And that's something that truly bothers me. And to give you guys just like a quick example of that, recently in Seahawks land, Brian Emhauser had a great breakdown of Darnold versus Geno and using the pressure stats and comparing those from Geno last year, his worst year with the worst offensive coordinator, blah, 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 and Sam Darnold in his absolute best year with a great offensive coordinator, blah, 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 blah. And basically, Brian just compares the numbers, in being a smart guy and a guy that's a little more data driven. He even kind of, admits it on the pod there. You kind of look at the numbers and you go, well, yeah, Darnold's better here and Geno's worse here. And then Darnold's better here and then Geno's worse here. And all the way down the line. And you don't take into account any of the important context around why those numbers are what they are. The numbers don't tell the full story. And that's what happens with BPA. You start looking at it and you go, hey, this is the best player on the board. And you're like, yes, he is the best safety. Well, how much benefit do you get out of having the best safety on the board when you're so weak at another spot? And that's what BPA does. It kind of ignores the context, and that's where it gets under my skin a little bit.
I wonder too, when people say best BPA, because it is so subjective as to what the best player is. I wonder if they mean best athlete, because a lot of times when you're looking at data, you can look at two different people and you can say, okay, well, this guy is, he has like all these stats that he put up in college, and clearly was a good college player and played in, the SEC, or played against some of the best competition. But then we have another guy who, yeah, he's coming out of a smaller school, but while he doesn't have the stats to make up for it, he does have all these NFL traits in terms of height, weight, speed. And so trying to then determine and project who's going to be the best player, I think that's one of those things that ends up being a tiebreaker between some of these guys.
I think that could be fair, right? And I see some of the comments too that are like, well, nobody says do this for all your picks all the way down, 10 picks in seven rounds. Yeah, not the point, right? This is really the top of the draft. So we're talking about first round, or maybe let's say the top 100, if you want to kind of put a nice, cap on it. And the biggest argument, which really you guys know gets under my skin, is the BPA, again, cultists will scream and yell at you like, that's exactly how you get LJ Collier. That's how you get LJ Collier, right? Like that. That basically just like that. And they're shaking you with their pitchforks. And it's like, no, how you get LJ Collier is by thinking you could outmaneuver the board in so many ways. You trade back and you trade back again. And then maybe you hit a panic button and then you do settle on LJ Collier, a guy that you think is okay, but then he's just not. He's just, he's kind of mid and he's whatever, getting his second contract with the Cardinals at this point. But
hey, to cut in on the LJ Collier slander, like I know as Seahawks fans, like he wasn't really worth a first round pick. But if you get a guy at the back end of the first round who ends up being in the league like 7 or 8 years, he's a good player.
He's
not
a
good player.
But there's guys that are taken in that in the bottom of the first round that wash out of the NFL in the first contract.
He's survived, right? And he's done well. Good. He's made his money. And I wish him nothing but the best. But I just, when that's the thing that gets thrown in your face, is like, that's the example. That's what you get when you don't go BPA. It's like, to me, it's again, a very dumb argument, because John got himself into that position and then they selected LJ Collier thinking that that's the case.
That was drafting for that. This is an example of drafting for need though, right?
Right. That's an example of drafting for need, as opposed to whoever might've been, the best player available right at the time. That's their quintessential drafting for need thing. Then when you hear some other folks talk, like Daniel Jeremiah was on, I think it was Brock and Salk the other day, and Brock and Salk were talking about this. I thought it was a good discussion, where I know people get on Salk's case, like one way or another, like maybe he's not a Seattle native. I'm in Connecticut, so I'm a little distant from all that anyway. But Salk was like, look, if the guy's not going to have impact, he started calling like the impact measure. He's like, if a guy's not going to have impact this year because you took the best dude, but he's going to sit behind 2 other linebackers, like, that has to be part of the equation. And then you hear Daniel Jeremiah talk about it, and he goes, yeah. He's like, what people don't realize is when they when they come up with their numbers, there's a weight in there that's based on need. Like, need is part of the formula. It has to be. So I really want this to come to light and hopefully start changing some people's minds that are like, you've got to take a safety at 18. Look, I think Malachi Starks is pretty freaking awesome. I think he would help this team. I think he's really good. And we actually do need a third safety. Is he the most impactful guy we could take at 18? I struggle with that dramatically. Or let's go one click. Let's call it like, to the extreme. Would the Patriots, if Cam Ward fell to 4, would the Patriots select Cam Ward at 4, Adam?
No, but I hear what you're saying here too, in the idea of, well, if you pick for need, that's how you get LJ Collier. In gosh, I'm blanking on dude's name who fell off the 4-wheeler and bonked his noggin and then never played for us. Thank you, Malik McDowell. He was a guy that scored well on all the athletic tests and all that stuff. They used more of a BPA model there. That's how you get Malik McDowell. So it's not that BPA or need gives you that sort of pick. What gives you that sort of pick is missing on the pick, which happens all the time. You can have all the best data in the world, and whether you're doing it via BPA or need, it could just not be a guy who works out. That happens. But to your point, I'd listened to Salk say a little bit about the impact thing, and I think this is the most important part of the discussion. And there's a kind of a rule of thumb in life and in the world, kind of like it falls into kind of that common sense category called the Pareto principle. And basically it's the 80-20 rule. And what it states is that your top 20 inputs, let's say if we're talking about a bad outcome, your top 20 inputs, or 20% of inputs that create bad outcomes, if you look at those, they create 80% of the consequences, 80% of the results. And when you're talking about impact and drafting more for need, I think this is where this plays in. Because if you're trying to increase the level of the team the most with the least amount of input, then you would select the players that would solve the top 20% of the problems on the team to get 80% of the consequences resolved. Like you get the most bang for your buck out of picking those guys. And so when you look at it, we all agree offensive line was the worst position on the team on the offense this year, specifically the 2 guard spots. What's 2 out of 11? Is that pretty close to 20%? Because I think it is.
Yeah.
So if you solve those 20% of problems and you actually go after that, then you get a result that is closer to fixing 80% of your problems on the offense. So I'm not saying that the guards were all 20%, the biggest 20%, obviously offensive coordinator and offensive line. I think you combine all that, that's your biggest contributors in your top 20% of problems. So at the end of the day, you can go and pick a safety. You can go and pick a running back early if you want, or even in the first 3 rounds. But it's like taking Witherspoon the other year. Like, was he the best player available? Maybe. I mean, some people.
Jalen Carter was the best player available.
I
if you go based on player.
If you go based on numbers, sure. I'm not sure that. I mean, it's close. I think it's
people
closer
were considered Jalen Carter to be a top 5 player out of that draft, and it was only because of the questions around his character and those sort of things that dropped him as far as the team.
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, Witherspoon's a really, really good football player. Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying if you're using that as a best player versus need argument, then Jalen Carter, well, shoot, I mean, we needed interior defensive.
That's exactly it. You'd have been picking for need there.
Too.
Yeah,
right.
and that's part of the context that goes in his character and all that stuff. What I'm getting at is you draft Devin Witherspoon when your need was really in the trenches, and while Witherspoon's a fantastic player and a really good player, in his impact, because he wasn't part of the top 20% of the problems, didn't give you that 80% of relief from those problems that you're looking for. And I think he's an excellent example of that. But I think there's more to it, guys. But that's just kind of when you talk about impact. I think a guy that affects that 80% is a bigger, better pick for your team than a guy who scores off the chart in some athletic score.
Adam needs to put together a Pareto principle slideshow for John Schneider and deliver that before the draft. And maybe to help do that, we've got Ryan911, our live executive producer, in the chat with a $9.99 super chat saying go Hawks. Also had Dogzilla Monster with a $2 super chat earlier. And we've got Nathan Roberts asking, how do you become a member? If you want to become a member out on YouTube, you can click the join button. That helps to support the show. You can also do gift memberships to folks who are in the chat as well. And if you want to help support the show in other ways, getintheflock.com. That's a good way to do it too. Clinton, I wanted to get a little bit into some of the players in the draft. And I was looking at Lance Zierlein's, his mock draft, and to kind of give you an idea of how we might play this out, looking at players who kind of fall into that area of where the Seahawks are drafting at number 18. Lance Zierlein in his mock draft, he has Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama, going to the Cardinals at 16. You know, with mock drafts, I'd like to use them as just kind of an idea of where some guys could go. So Tyler Booker likely to be available around this area. He's got Mike Green, the edge rusher out of Marshall. A kind of a, it's tougher to go with some of the smaller school guys, but a lot of traits that match up with the NFL in Mike Green. And Teteroa McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona to the Seahawks. Shamar Stewart, another edge rusher, but out of Texas A&M, and another guy who is has a lot of traits. And the thing is about edge rushers, if they are guys who have shown production and done really well in college, they're going to be top 10. They're not falling to the 20s. So you're looking for a lot of traits when it comes to some of these edge players.
Yep.
And then at number 20, because I thought it would be fun to throw this in there, Amarion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. And if I had to pick the best player out of all 5 of those guys, I think it would be Amarion Hampton. And so if you're in that range and you really, if you are set and sold on the idea of best player and taking the guy who projects to be the best of all of them in the NFL, then you're probably drafting running back. And I think that might upset some of the people in the BPA crowd too.
It might just Twitter might blow up, right? Seahawks Twitter might go bananas, and rightfully so, because I think Marion Hampton is a very nice back, and some are making that last pitch argument that he's going to be better than Genty, and hey, he might be. Like, you never know. Like when Detroit got up and went and got Gibbs much earlier than people thought. It was like, well, there's Bijan, and then there's others, but Gibbs won't go that high. Detroit said not so fast, and Gibbs has been phenomenal, right? So you don't know. And he might be the best player available, but he's not right for the Seahawks at 18. So it's not going to happen because we have 3 on the roster and then a 4 with Halani who could tote the rock, who are all, besides Walker coming up on his rookie, end of the rookie year, under contract for cheap money, who could do the job. But so it's a nice example of what you would not do there, right? The piece for me, guys, too, is that like why I don't like the BPA argument. I'm so against it. It's not because I'm so dug in that we have to take an interior offensive lineman at 18. That's not it. I'm quite flexible. That like, look, if there's not that I think we need a safety, but if you're really convinced the safety is going to be right for this team, or there's a great cornerback there, and we've got Tariq Woolen coming up next year on contract, you're not sure what you're going to do. I'm flexible to those things. Not what I want. I would prefer trenches. So if it's not, offensive line, I would love to see if there's a defensive tackle or an edge guy, but not for me, Brandon, not Shamar Stewart. I don't want a guy who has traits, but has not gotten home at the college level either. It's like, we don't need that experiment this year. We have a great, a great amount of edge guys as it is, but the absolutism that BPA talks about. So what happens is, it's in their brains. You got to take BPA. So the next logical thing that they get to, because they heard it from somebody else, is, well, guards are not first round talent. You don't take a guard in the first round. Why? Because the BPA gods told you so. Like, grow up, Peter Pan. Like, if a guard is going to be, if you think that guard, and by the way, at 18, the very best guard is usually available. So you could have your cake and eat it too at 18, that maybe a great tackle that's going to be like a number 1 guard in the NFL is still available, or simply Donovan Jackson, Gray Zabel, and others are just sitting there at 18. It solves a major need, and they actually are, if not best player available, they're way, way up on that list. And when you tuck need into it, they become a pretty obvious choice. But the absolutism that you don't take a guard in the first round because that's not value, it makes me freaking want to vomit. And I want to
know who's talking in absolutes, because I can't imagine that any general manager in football thinks that way in terms of absolutes. Maybe people who are focused exclusively on the draft get that way, but I guess I have a problem seeing a general manager who would do that. And Sean Scotchman is in the chat saying, even evaluating BPA is subjective to each team's idea of what is best player. What we feel is best may not be best for John Schneider and Mike McDonald.
And that's a great point by Sean there, because you got to think about what's best for the team at what stage the team is in. And I think this is part of the context around the conversation that often gets lost in when I'm looking at it. If you're a team that is, say, like, just pick a terrible team, the Browns, right? Or whatever.
That's the first one that came to my mind too.
Yeah. Just pick any of them, the Jags, right? And you bring in a new coach, you bring in a new GM, and it's time to build this thing. Are you trying to build a more of the random all-star team by leaning way harder into BPA than you do need? Or at that stage, is it more important to pick the best players available at foundational positions like offensive line, defensive line, and start to build a program? And then once you get to a certain point where you're pretty good and you have those sort of core players in your building, now I think you have the luxury to lean harder into BPA. So it's not like it's set for any individual team in terms of this is what you do all the time. I think it matters where you are in the process of building a team. Mm-hmm. And I feel like at this point with offensive line, John has kicked the can down the road so many times that you paint yourself into a corner where you have to throw out BPA at that point if there is one of the top guards that you view as legitimately a top guard available for you at 18. And I mean, the other part of it is, I think every year, how many like legit, like difference making first rounders do they usually think there is? Like 12 to 16 or something like that. I would argue that like within that set of picks, more often than not, you probably go best player. But then from rounds 2nd through 4th to 5th, I think that should be weighted way more towards need. And then at the back half, just pick the best, the back couple rounds, just pick the best dude on the board and see if he blossoms, because they're all extreme scratchers anyways. And that would be the way that I would go about it. And I think John's painted himself into a corner this year to where he's kind of have to throw that out for the most part, but he doesn't have to pick offensive line at 18. I've never said that. Just give me 2 in the top 5 picks and I'm happy.
I think that feels doable. Sean Scotchman in chat saying, I bet John Schneider, Mike McDonald has BPA for each position based on their own matrix. And Clinton, I feel like we've been able to kind of pick up on how the Seahawks, and whether it was John Schneider and Pete Carroll or John Schneider and Mike McDonald, kind of how they group players, right?
I think so. And a lot of the different characteristics, and like back in the day, the spark scores were a big deal. And so those like explosive scores were really a big deal. It seemed like for in those like late 2015, 2016 years. But yeah, and of course the character thing being just tremendous. And like hey, there's a reason we would say this guy feels Seahawky. And it wasn't because it's cool to say. It was like, oh, this guy's characteristics, his makeup, the way he talks, the way the team rallies around, just things like that. The way, for a couple of years there, at least, like the way the guy would bring his hat, like this guy feels Seahawky. We're going to be doing another show in a couple days that's looking at like draft crushes. I think we're going to do it on Tuesday. That's like, hey, what happens when you don't get your crush? Because it's inevitably going to happen. You're not going to get all your crushes. And who are dudes behind those guys? And a lot of that list is I feel, Brandon, like you're saying, it's like compiled of dudes that, well, they still feel Seahawky. Now, the interesting part is, and this, I forget who it was. So I hate that I can't give him credit, but I mentioned that a bit ago. I was like, oh, they feel Seahawky. It was like a YouTube comment. And they said, well, what do you mean? Does it feel Seahawky like Pete Carroll Seahawky, or do you believe it's Mike McDonald Seahawky? And I was like, oh, that's a good question. And it made me think about the different levers that are there now. And so that's the thing we got to get used to, guys. It's just like, what is Mike McDonald Seahawky? And is it very similar, or is there actually a bit of a sea change from Pete? And I don't know. I'm not really sure that I have a clear answer there yet, Adam. I'm not sure if you have a thought.
Oh boy, it's hard to tell. I think we're still learning when it comes to Coach Mike. That's a fun part of it. But one of the things that he says constantly is he wants to build the spine of the team. He wants to be tough in the trenches. He wants to be able to run the ball and stop the run and all of that stuff. So we will see here. Do we have a funny one from Dogzilla here, Brandon?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, Dogzilla saying the LOB were character players and in quotes, and saying, laughing and saying they were criminally violent. The thing about, I think one of the things that, when you're looking at character, there's football character, there's off-field character. When they talk about bringing guys in the building, which they seem to have been placing a really big emphasis on players, going back ever since, I mean, it feels like they miss on guys and they really focus on the character aspect of it. And it can lead them even to taking a guy like Frank Clark, who had off-field character stuff going on, but on the field and work ethic type character, it had to be there because he went from being, he took all of those athletic traits and turned himself into a Pro Bowl caliber offensive or defensive pass rusher. So I think that you can balance those characteristics, and with the LOB, there may have been some off-field characteristic type issues, but all those guys had the type of work ethic that I think Pete Carroll and John Schneider recognized that allowed them to build that defense.
Yeah. I want to, it was earlier, the snail had a great comment, and I just mentally logged it. He was saying, like, in his opinion, which I think a lot of folks are saying, which I think is valid, that the delta between, let's say, the first interior offensive lineman, so let's just say guards, like the first guard, and then maybe like the fourth or fifth or sixth guard, that it doesn't seem that there's a huge gap, and it can be more difficult to determine, right? So I understand. So if you start thinking, okay, look, we could get high quality guards in the third round. We could get high quality guards in the fourth round. And look, I know, right? I know that's the thing. And like,
because that's the thing. Yeah.
I every year there's like
How about
like,
that high quality guard that we got in the third round last year?
Right, exactly. It hasn't exactly, come to fruition yet with Christian Haynes, right? But Dominic Pooney went after Christian Haynes. So folks will point to them, be like, well, there is talent there. It's like, yes, but there's a huge asterisk on that Seattle has not invested early at all in interior offensive linemen. That's just like the way John Schneider has wanted to run this, and Pete, seemingly as well as a partner for all those years. But it hasn't worked out. It's not like we've done well in rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 with even third round with interior offensive linemen. So Snail, I totally hear you, and I don't think you're wrong. But Brandon, I guess I wonder, do you think because we've been so unsuccessful back of the draft with line that we just have to change our stripes? And I guess, would you want them to? And do you think John Schneider actually will?
Whether I want them to, it really depends on who ends up being available at that spot. Like, I don't want them to take a guy who's probably going to be available in the second, third, and fourth rounds just because he might be the best guard remaining on the board at number 18. No, there's
Even
plenty of other players where
15% of your problems.
Yeah, because, well,
wow.
Look, if you could tell me that the third round guard is going to come in and absolutely fix problems at number 18, then you take him there. But there's a reason he's projected in the third round by draft analysts, for a reason, because they don't think that he's that immediate impact type guy. And so if there's other players who are available at 18 who are more immediate impact and fill other needs on the team, like, I would take the best corner on the board over a guy whose offensive line hasn't, if he's projected in the fourth round.
I couldn't wholeheartedly disagree more, because you tell me, hey, if you can guarantee,
that's overcompensating on the drafting for need bit.
Just hold on. And it is for a couple of reasons. One, as Clinton has pointed out, that we have tried this process for a decade. It's not a small sample size. It's been tried for a decade plus. We have enough to know that this process is not working for John Schneider and the Seahawks. The definition of crazy is banging your head against the wall, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. That's insanity. And then you tell me, okay, so if you can guarantee me the guard that you pick in the first round that was a second round prospect, guaranteed comes in and is a starter and is good and helps fix 15% of your problems, that's great. You can't guarantee any draft pick, but what I can guarantee you, Brandon, is that a corner at 18 will not fix anything on the offensive line. There's a 0% probability of that. And that's where the rub is.
Well, then you're talking exclusively about only drafting offensive line because you feel like that's the biggest problem.
I think that you have to really dedicate your resources this year to fixing that problem, because you've been trying to do it on the cheap or in the sneaky way, picking them late, whatever it is, and being the guy who's ahead of the curve. And it's failed 10 years in a row. And it's just comes a point. Now you have to do something different. So I'm not saying that you have to take that guy at 18. I'm not. But what I am saying is that you have to be in on one of the best 3 guards, like, as fast as you can, whether that's trading out of 18 and going down a little bit and then picking, if it's Zabel or Booker or whoever the hell it is that they think is the dude there, like, do that. If it's, trading up and being close to the top of the second round and getting, who was the kid in Brett Nijay's top 10 gems? He was, an Islander kid, a Samoan. I could never say.
Oh,
his last
yeah.
name.
From Arizona State.
Yeah. Sure. Then go do that. Like, but you have to invest in it now, and you have to do it early-ish, and you got to change your stripes because it hasn't worked.
Yeah, you're talking about more within the margins of, okay, if you have to go with a guy a half a round early just to ensure that you get that guy, then go ahead and do that. But
yeah, screw it. Even if it's a full round, like
Well,
I
that's
get
the
really
thing, right?
tired of GM value brain, like, because I got to get the best value because that's what it is, and that will make me successful. You know what we don't care about 3-4 years down the line, whether when you pick the guy you got tremendous value or not. Nobody talks about it. Nobody's talking about, did the Vikings get tremendous value when they picked Justin Jefferson? Whatever. Do you even know what pick he was picked at? I don't, off the top of my head. Nobody gives a shit.
I would guess 18. I think it was toward the second half of the round.
Right. Nobody gives a crap. What you care about is whether Duke can play or Duke can't play. That's it. That's all. That's the bottom line. Did you get better or did you not?
Yeah. So I think a really good player to focus on that I think is right in that right in that spot where I think most people seem to feel that this guy is let's call it like an early second rounder. So Donovan Jackson, I think, is a really cool one to focus on, right? So he's a guard from Ohio State, so big place. He's got all the measurables. He looks quite good. Could he sneak up into the first round? Maybe. Could he last to 50, 52? Maybe, depending on which draft simulator you go on. Sometimes he's there, but I mean, come on, it's still at the end of it, still a premier position because it's offensive line from a big pedigree school who has all the tape out there and all the measurables, right? So a dude like that, if you're like, look, we are pretty sure, because if you take it at 18, you're pretty sure. But if you're like, we're pretty darn sure, because the snail put up, what if we draft a crap guard at 18? I understand that. I get the question. If you were to take a Donovan Jackson at 18, and some will say that's too early because he's probably going to go 35th or 42nd. It's like, okay, but then what? Because are you sure Tate Ratledge is going to last to 50? The other, the Georgia guard. Are you sure Marcus Embo? I think it's Embo. I heard
Embo,
it pronounced Embo, but Embo is going to be there. Are you sure Savigny is going to last to 50, 52? Because I'm not sure. And waiting all that time to see if one of the dudes you think might be just as good as Donovan Jackson, but you're not sure, might be there tomorrow, when that's the problem you have to fix. I'm just so on that side of it that I'd prefer that be the case. But if they sit there and go, look, Kenneth Grant's our guy, we're going to do strength on strength, and we're going to make this the best defensive tackle unit in the league, I'm not going to be mad. Not that I love Kenneth Grant, but just philosophically, I won't be mad at the idea of building that strength. It's just, that's the one for me, guys. It's like Donovan Jackson's a perfect example of he might be there later, but I think universally people are like, he's a damn good guard. What is wrong with that at 18, Brandon?
There is, I will strongly argue that there is nothing wrong with that. Just because a guard is taken in the top 20 doesn't mean you got bad value 3 years down the road. It's like, yeah, Justin Jefferson taken at 22. Very good value for a guy who is probably a future Hall of Famer, right? And if you were to go back to that draft and say someone within the top 5 took Justin Jefferson, and he turned out to be the player that he is now,
should go
nobody
one.
is saying, oh my gosh. Yeah, well, he should go one. Well, you want to look and see who else went.
Yeah, I mean, if there wasn't a quarterback, right? That's all right.
But
quarterback
still,
or an offensive
nobody in that draft is complaining about the Vikings all these years later about drafting Justin Jefferson in the top 5. Yeah, he probably, Joe Burrow. But shoot, Washington took Chase Young at number 2. If they took Justin Jefferson at number 2 instead of Chase Young, nobody has an issue with it 5 years down the road.
My question is how many of the people that are really obsessed with the value proposition of the draft based on some chart that Jimmy Johnson came up with that people have then reworked for a couple decades now, how many of those people, when they have a player selected by X team, that they're like, this is a great value, and then the player washes out, like, 3 years later, are they talking to when the team is cutting that player? Are
Well, at
they
least we
like,
got good value in the draft.
hey, they got great value, it just didn't work out? No, there's like, that dude sucked. And it's like, yeah, because it wasn't such a great value. Nobody can really predict that.
Well,
Pick dudes you think are good, that are going to help you at the positions that you need, and you're going to have a better football team. When you get to a point to where you're a solid football team, let's say like the Eagles, then you have much more latitude to just go around and say, well, he's the best athlete on the board, I'll take him. Or like the Lions did a little bit with Jahmyr Gibbs. Like they had worked their roster to a point to where they were good enough they could take those sort of risks.
And it sparked an idea too. Like, Tyrese Knight was panned. We needed a linebacker. There was lots of linebackers. That's the one they chose. It was like, oh my God, what terrible value. Now, I didn't know Tyrese Knight from Adam, not this Adam. And I was also drinking the Kool-Aid of, oh, this guy can't play a bit, and this is what everybody else says, right? So I'm guilty of it sometimes too. So I have to think critically more often myself. But then also AJ Barner. AJ Barner was, he was going to be a 6th rounder. You know what AJ Barner is? He's a darn good tight end. AJ Barner fits right in. He is a starting NFL caliber tight end. He's really, really good. So 2 examples of those are positions of need where they still took the dude they liked. And it just wasn't, I don't know. I guess something you said sparked that for me, Adam, that it's like, those are nice examples of they were panned value wise. Both of those guys, they might be our 2 best draft picks last year.
Well, to Warren's point, Eagles do BPA, and they do, but
they
don't do it. But they don't do it just as a blanket philosophy. They generally, and this is why they've been good, they pick the best players available in the trenches. They may not be like, we have to have a guard. They may see a tackle that they really like. They're like, you know what? That's the best player. I'll take him. But they're still investing there, and then they can kick him inside if they have to or whatever. But at the end of the day, they have put their focus on the foundational piece of their team, which is the trenches. And that's what I think most of the folks that are a little more on the diehard BPA part is that they don't understand team building in the sense of, you can't build a team by picking randomly a corner because he was the best, and then randomly a tight end because he was the best, and then randomly a linebacker because he was the best. You have to build your team from the inside out, or you're going to struggle mightily.
Build it from the inside out. Marvin Little Deer in the chat agrees with you. Guys, I think we have discussed this topic very well today. I really want to thank everybody who joined us live out on youtube.com/Seahawkers podcast. Big thanks to Dogzilla Monster and Ryan911 for the super chats as well. Guys, it's just a couple weeks to the draft, and man, oh man, I can't wait till we are at Clearwater Casino and watching that round 1 of the NFL draft.
Heck yeah, man. It's going to be a great time. And Clinton, I'm glad that we got out here and got to talk about this a little bit. I know this has been burning you up a little bit, and I get it, man, because the stat nerds do irritate me quite a bit. And they definitely seem to fall more into that notion. And I can see that in this particular case, it was getting at you.
Hey, I got a chance to yell at some cultists, so I'm happy.
What color is the BPA Kool-Aid, by the way?
Right now, it's like this gross ecto action green that we see oozing out there, right? Which I usually like, but it's that's what's hitting me right now. Action green, Kool-Aid, and just all the BPA nerds can go die.
I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.